Nathan had seen some ridiculous things in his life, but this was a new level of insanity. He stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching as a group of middle-aged suburbanites in pastel polos and oversized sun hats strode through his farm like they were on a supervised nature tour. They stepped over fences, trampled his crops, and even, God help them, started picking tomatoes straight from his plants. He blinked twice. Sure, he was hallucinating, but no, it was real. The self-appointed rulers of the Hoa had arrived uninvited, unbothered, and completely unaware that they were moments away from a terrible lesson in boundaries. At the front of the group, leading them with the overconfident confidence of a monarch surveying her kingdom, was Karen Whitmore. Nathan should have known. She had been a constant thorn in his side for years, complaining about his unsightly barn, the unpleasant odor of animals, and even the color of his fence. Never mind that his farm had been here long before her uniform. Cookie-cutter neighborhood popped up down the road, and now here she was, acting as if she controlled the place, waving her perfectly polished hand like she was introducing a historic landmark. "Oh, don't mind us, Nathan," Karen called out when she finally noticed him standing on his porch. She gave a dismissive little wave like he was some ordinary farmhand she barely recognized. "We're just taking a little walk. Fresh air, you know. Your land is so charming." She said it like it was an insult, wrapped in a compliment. Nathan exhaled slowly, gripping his coffee cup a little tighter. "Karen," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "this is private property." "Oh, come now," she said, placing a dramatic hand on her chest. "We're all neighbors, and besides, our Hoa has voted that we should have shared access to all visually shared land." Nathan stared at her, waiting for her to admit she was kidding. She didn't. Neither did the 5 other Hoa members currently stomping through his rows of lettuce like lost tourists. "You voted?" Nathan repeated slowly, as if tasting the sheer foolishness of her words. "Yes," she said, beaming. "We've decided that your farm is part of our community's beautiful value, so we thought, why not enjoy it? It's really for the welfare of everyone." One of the women in the group, a woman wearing heels on a farm in a field of damp soil, snapped a selfie, adjusting her sunglasses as she rested against his fence. Another man picked up a handful of strawberries from a crate by the barn and popped one in his mouth. Nathan set his coffee down on the railing before he dropped it. "Did you just? Oh, these are amazing," the man interrupted, nodding in approval. "Much better than market bought." Nathan felt his eye twitch. He took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to throw the whole group into his pig pen. "You've got 10 seconds to get off my land," he said, his voice steady, "before I let my dogs out." Karen's smug smile didn't waver. If anything, she looked entertained. "Nathan, be reasonable. This is just a neighborly visit. You can't be so possessive about a few acres of land." Nathan glanced at the expanse of land she was referring to, now dotted with people plucking fruits, stomping across vegetable rows, and taking artistic pictures like they were at a farmer's market they hadn't paid for. He clenched his jaw. "You don't own this, Karen," he said, stepping off the porch. "This isn't some suburban park. This is my farm, my livelihood." Karen laughed softly, like he had told a harmless joke. "Oh, don't be so melodramatic. It's just land." Nathan let out a slow, bitter chuckle. "You're right. It's just land. But it's my land, and if you think a bunch of Hoa rulemakers can decide what happens on my property, then you're about to have a very memorable morning." Karen's smile finally flickered. "Are you threatening me?" Nathan took another step closer, lowering his voice just enough. "I'm warning you, but..." Karen wasn't used to hearing the word no with a dismissive huff. She turned her attention back to her group, completely unfazed. "Let's not waste time arguing," she called out. "Everyone feel free to walk around and enjoy. Nathan won't mind. He's just being overly dramatic." The group cheered. One of them unpacked a picnic basket. Another set up a portable chair. Nathan watched in growing horror as a woman laid down a patterned blanket and started unpacking cheese and snacks. It was official. They were having brunch. Nathan's fingers curled into fists. This wasn't just ignorance. This was pure, unfiltered entitlement. They weren't even pretending to ask permission anymore. In their minds, his property was their shared space. Fine. They wanted a farm experience. They were about to get one. Nathan turned on his heel and marched toward the barn. He could already hear Karen gossiping to one of the women about how he was such a grump and so unneighborly. He ignored it. He had better things to do. Inside the barn, two large figures shifted. Bear and Duke. Nathan whistled. Instantly, both dogs perked up, ears alert, eyes focused. Bear, a massive mountain of muscle and fur, let out a deep, rumbling growl. Duke, slightly leaner, but just as intimidating, bared his teeth. Nathan opened the gate. "Go say hello," he muttered. Bear and Duke dashed. A shriek pierced the air before Nathan even made it back. Outside, pure chaos erupted. Karen was running like her expensive loafers were on fire, arms flailing, shrieking at the top of her lungs. One man tripped face first into the dirt. Another screamed about his designer jeans being ruined. The picnic basket went flying, sending cheese and crackers soaring through the air. Nathan leaned against the porch railing, watching the spectacle unfold with the calm satisfaction of a man who had finally won. "Have fun," he called over the screaming Bear and Duke, trained to chase but not attack. Did their job perfectly. They charged through the group like furry wrecking balls, forcing them to scatter in all directions. One woman tried to climb a fence and got stuck halfway, shrieking for help. Karen, breathless and covered in dirt, whipped around and pointed a shaking finger at Nathan. "You'll regret this," she screamed. Nathan sipped his coffee, doubted, and with that, the whole first mistake turned into an unforgettable lesson in why you don't mess with the farmer and his dogs. Nathan had expected that to be the end of it. He figured after being chased off his land by two massive farm dogs, Karen and her Hoa crew would tuck their tails between their legs and never return. Common sense would have dictated that, but Karen, as he was beginning to realize, had the survival instincts of a mosquito. Annoying, persistent, and completely incapable of understanding when she was unwelcome. So when he stepped outside 2 mornings later and found them back on his land, setting up what could only be described as a fully catered brunch, he didn't even feel anger at first, just a deep bone-weary sense of disbelief. There they were, unfolding chairs, unpacking champagne bottles, and cutting up freshly baked scones as if they were in some sort of rustic countryside retreat. Someone had even brought a white lace tablecloth, and it was spread out across a table that most certainly did not belong to them. Nathan took a slow breath through his nose, counted to 3, and exhaled. Maybe, just maybe, he was hallucinating. Maybe he had worked too hard the night before, and his brain was punishing him with stress-induced visions. Because surely not even Karen was this bold. And then she saw him. Karen, dressed in a wide-brimmed sun hat and an expensive-looking floral dress that had no business being worn anywhere near a farm, lifted her mimosa and smiled. "Oh, Nathan, there you are. Come join us. The scones are delightful." Nathan closed his eyes for a brief second, wondering what past sins he was being punished for. "Karen," he said, voice deceptively calm. "What the hell are you doing?" "Oh, relax," she said, with a careless wave of her hand. "We didn't want our last visit to end on such a negative note, so we decided to try again. You can't be so selfish with all this beautiful land, Nathan. It's a shame not to share it." Nathan looked past her, taking in the absurdity of the situation. One woman was spreading brie on a cracker, completely unbothered by the fact that she was seated on stolen property. A man in khaki shorts was pouring himself a second glass of champagne, chatting animatedly with another Hoa member like they weren't trespassing in broad daylight. "Let me get this straight," Nathan said slowly, eyes locked onto Karen. "You got chased off my farm, barely escaped being bitten by my dogs, and your next thought was, let's do that again, but fancier." Karen chuckled like he had said something adorable. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It was just a misunderstanding. Now if you're done being difficult, why don't you sit down and join us? We even brought an extra glass for you." Nathan's hands curled into fists. This wasn't ignorance, this was entitlement in its purest form. She wasn't even pretending to ask permission anymore. In her mind, his farm had simply become her newest weekend getaway spot. I don't think you understand, Nathan said, stepping closer, voice sharp as a blade. This is my farm, my land, and you are trespassing again. Karen sighed, exasperated. Nathan, you're taking this way too seriously. It's not like we're damaging anything. Nathan's eye twitched. Not damaging anything. His crops were being crushed under their chairs. His property was being treated like a public park. And then he froze, fury hitting him like a storm. One of the men had pulled out a knife and was slicing into a freshly picked apple. An apple from Nathan's own trees, that was it. Nathan didn't say another word. He simply turned on his heel and walked toward the barn. Oh, there he goes again, Karen said behind him, tone dismissive. Probably off to sulk. He'll calm down in a few minutes. Nathan almost smiled. No, he wouldn't. Inside the barn, Bear and Duke were already awake, ears perked. They had been restless since the last incident. Sensing that their job wasn't finished, Nathan whistled low and sharp, and instantly both dogs were on their feet. You know what to do, he murmured. They did. The chaos began exactly 3 seconds later. A high-pitched scream shattered the air as Bear and Duke burst out of the barn, massive bodies moving like bullets. The brunch table flipped instantly, plates and glasses smashing against the ground. Karen let out a shriek, scrambling backward so fast she stumbled over her own chair. The man who had stolen Nathan's apple threw it into the air and ran like his life depended on it. Someone tried to climb over the fence, got halfway, and then fell straight into a pile of manure. Nathan leaned against the barn door, arms crossed, watching it all unfold with the calm satisfaction of a man who had officially won. Call them off, Karen screamed, clutching her ridiculous sun hat as she dodged Bear's charge. Nathan sipped his coffee. Why, I thought you wanted to enjoy the land. This isn't funny, she yelled, dodging past a man who was flailing on the ground trying to crawl away from Duke's paws. Nathan laughed. I disagree. Bear lunged at the overturned picnic basket, sinking his teeth into the lace tablecloth and dragging it through the mud. Duke, not to be outdone, snatched a champagne bottle in his jaws and took off across the field with it. One of the HOA members tried to reason with Karen as they ran. This is insane. Let's just leave. I'm trying, Karen snapped, yanking off her heels and sprinting barefoot through the grass. The last straw was when Duke, still holding the champagne bottle, ran circles around a particularly slow-moving man, trapping him in a whirlpool of terror. All right, Karen shrieked. We'll go, we're leaving. Nathan let out a sharp whistle. Bear and Duke, just short of actually forcing the entire HOA into the nearest pond, froze in place. Karen, breathless, covered in dirt and missing one earring, turned toward Nathan with a glare so sharp it could have cut through stone. You're going to regret this, she spat. Nathan smirked. Doubt it. And just like that, they were gone. The field was left in shambles. Food scattered, chairs abandoned, and a lace tablecloth still clamped between Bear's teeth. Duke, thoroughly enjoying himself, pranced around with the champagne bottle like it was his new favorite toy. Nathan sighed, rubbing Bear's ears as he watched Karen's defeated crew stumble back toward their neighborhood, humiliated and absolutely never coming back, or so he thought. Nathan had hoped, foolishly, that this time would be the last. That maybe, just maybe, Karen and her group of entitled suburban warriors would finally take the hint and stay out of his land. But deep down, he knew better. People like Karen didn't just accept defeat. They didn't know how to. They were the type to double down on stupidity, convinced that persistence was the same thing as being right. The proof of this came 2 days later when he received a formal letter from the HOA stamped and official. Nathan didn't even have to open it to know it would be absolute nonsense. But for the sake of amusement, he did. The letter was a masterpiece of delusion. Karen, now styling herself as the presiding representative of community safety, had filed an official complaint against him for creating an unsafe and hostile environment for residents. Apparently, according to her, his dogs were a public threat and needed to be relocated for the greater good of the community. Nathan let out a slow, hollow laugh. Oh, this was rich. They trespassed, they stole, they set up a full-blown picnic on his land. And now, they were calling him a threat. Filing the letter under things to laugh at later, he carried on with his day, thinking that was the worst of it. But once again, he had underestimated just how far Karen was willing to take her vendetta. Later that afternoon, Nathan spotted a white SUV pulling up to his front gate. The side of it was marked with an emblem he recognized instantly. Animal control. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head as he made his way toward the vehicle. The officer who stepped out, a middle-aged man with a notepad, looked more drained than anything else. He gave Nathan a respectful nod before glancing down at his documents. "Afternoon, sir. We received a complaint about 2 aggressive dogs on this land, came to inspect it." Nathan didn't even pretend to be shocked. "Let me guess, a blonde woman with an inflated ego and a voice like nails on a whiteboard." The officer looked up, one eyebrow lifted. "So you already know who reported?" Nathan chuckled, folding his hands. It wasn't hard to realize the officer sighed. "Mind if I take a peek at the dogs?" Nathan whistled loudly, and within moments Bear and Duke came trotting out from the shed, tails wagging, looking like the world's kindest giants. Duke, ever the clown, dropped his stolen glass bottle at the officer's feet in an apparent gift offering. The officer laughed. "Yeah, these look real vicious." Nathan smirked. "Deadly, aren't they?" The officer crouched down, giving Bear a pat behind the ears. "Honestly, I get these kinds of grievances all the time. Hoa types who don't like that they can't govern everything. From what I can see, these dogs aren't violent, just well disciplined." Nathan nodded. "That, and they don't take kindly to intruders." The officer stood, flipping his file shut. "Sounds like their problem." Nathan liked this response. "So what happens next?" Nathan asked. "Well," the officer said, rubbing his chin, "since there's no actual proof of aggression, this complaint doesn't hold validity. I'll be marking it as groundless. But if she keeps bothering you, you might want to think about reporting something against her officially." Nathan smiled lightly. Now, that was an opportunity. As the officer drove off, Nathan's mind was already calculating. If Karen wanted to play the legal game, fine. He could compete too. But unlike her, he actually had a solid case. He gathered up every single recording he had from the past days. Every trespassing moment, every stolen produce, every ridiculous meal setup. It was all there, perfectly clear. He arranged it neatly, added a few important legal notes about ownership laws and property rights, and then, for good measure, sent a bundle directly to the Hoa's legal office. By the next day, Karen was in trouble. It turned out the Hoa committee wasn't exactly thrilled to learn that their leader had been leading unauthorized visits onto restricted property. Even worse, Karen's decisions had put them at risk for a lawsuit. A lawsuit that, according to the Hoa's own attorney, Nathan would absolutely win. Nathan didn't even have to submit anything. The moment the board saw the proof, they turned on Karen immediately. That afternoon, a very flustered-looking Karen showed up at his ranch gate, arms folded, jaw tightened. She looked like a person forced to do something she absolutely did not want to say. Nathan took his moment, walking over, leaning lazily against the wooden fence. When he reached her, "Karen," he spoke, voice dripping with sarcasm, "to what do I owe the visit?" She exhaled sharply through her mouth. "The Hoa board has demanded that I formally apologize for any issues." Nathan raised an eyelid. "Issues?" Her eye flinched. "Fine. I apologize for intruding." Nathan tilted his chin, and she clenched her fingers. "And for the false accusations and the invalid report, and for treating your land like a public area." Nathan grinned. "Well, that's a start." Karen's expression tightened. "The board also warned me that if I'm accused of harassment again, I'll be dismissed from my role." Nathan let out a sharp whistle. "Oof, tough situation." She glowered. "Don't push it." He chuckled. "Oh, I wouldn't risk it." Karen sighed, clearly angry that she had been forced to submit without another comment. She spun on her feet and stormed away, muttering under her breath. Nathan watched her leave, a deep sense of victory settling in his chest. The fight was over. The war was finished. And best of all, Karen would never step again on his land. As he turned back toward the cabin, Bear and Duke walked up beside him, tails moving. He reached down, rubbing behind their necks. "Well, boys," he said, glancing back toward the vanishing figure of Karen, "I'd say that went smoothly." Duke let out a happy yelp. Bear, ever the serious one, simply sighed in agreement. Nathan chuckled. Life on the farm had finally gone back to the way it was meant to be: serene, quiet, and entirely Hoa free.